Hey guys, welcome back to the Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled people's story. This whole mess started when my family and I moved to a new city for my job. My wife, our 7-year-old daughter, and I had been saving up for years to buy a house, and we were pre-approved for a mortgage. But since we weren't familiar with the area, we decided to rent for a year first to get a feel for different neighborhoods. We found what seemed like the perfect place, a duplex in an excellent school district. It was a bit dated, but had good space and a small yard for our daughter to play in. The rent was reasonable, and most importantly, the school ratings were exactly what we wanted for our kid. The only potential red flag was that the landlord, Carol, lived in the other half of the duplex. During our initial tour, something felt off about her. She kept calling the duplex her pride and joy, and she treated it less like a rental property and more like a museum where we were just noisy, unpredictable exhibits. She asked us way too many personal questions about our lifestyle, work schedules, and even what kinds of food we cooked. Her husband Bob seemed like a nice enough guy, but he barely spoke during the tour. He just followed behind Carol, nodding and occasionally apologizing for things that didn't even need apologies. The poor man looked like he'd been beaten down by years of living with someone who needed to control every little detail. Despite the weird vibes from Carol, we decided to go ahead with the rental. The lease was completely standard. I read every single word of it before signing. There were no unusual clauses, no mention of aesthetic requirements, and definitely nothing about curtain colors or styles. It was just a basic residential lease agreement. For the first couple of months, everything was pretty quiet. Carol would occasionally make passive-aggressive comments about things like how we parked our car or where we put our trash cans, but nothing too crazy. We chalked it up to her being one of those people who's just particular about their property. The real trouble started when we decided to redecorate our daughter's room. She's absolutely obsessed with space and astronomy, so to help her feel more at home in the new city, we bought her these amazing blackout curtains with a vibrant galaxy print. They were high-quality, beautiful curtains that completely blocked out light and had this stunning, star-filled space design that she absolutely loved. We hung them up on a Saturday afternoon and our daughter was over the moon. She kept talking about how it felt like sleeping in a spaceship, and seeing her so happy made all the stress of moving worth it. That happiness lasted exactly 2 days. On Monday evening, I was just getting home from work when I heard this aggressive banging on our front door. Not knocking, banging. Someone was hitting the door with the flat of their hand like they were trying to break it down. I opened the door to find Carol standing there, red-faced and visibly furious. "What is that monstrosity hanging in your window?" she demanded without even saying hello. I was confused for a second. "What are you talking about?" "Those hideous curtains. They're completely inappropriate, and they're lowering the property value. They violate the community's aesthetic code." I tried to stay calm. "Carol, what aesthetic code? There's nothing in our lease about curtain requirements." She got even more agitated. "My property, my rules. Those things are an eyesore, and they need to come down immediately. You need to replace them with proper white vertical blinds." "The lease doesn't specify what kind of window treatments we can use," I replied. "These are just curtains in our daughter's bedroom." Carol's voice got louder. "I don't care what the lease says. This is a formal warning. Get rid of them or there will be consequences." After she stormed off, I went inside and told my wife what happened. We both agreed it was ridiculous, but we figured it would blow over. Carol was clearly just being dramatic about something that didn't matter. We were wrong. The next day, there was a poorly typed note taped to our door. It was titled, "Notice to Cure or Quit," and claimed we were violating building regulations. It gave us 3 days to remove the curtains or face eviction proceedings. My wife was really worried. Even though we knew the eviction threat was baseless, the stress of potentially having to fight a legal battle was overwhelming. We have a young daughter and didn't want to deal with that kind of chaos. That night, I was lying in bed frustrated and unable to sleep. Out of curiosity more than anything else, I grabbed my phone and started browsing real estate listings in our area. I don't know why, but I decided to type in our own address just to see what similar properties were selling for. I nearly dropped my phone when I saw what came up. Our duplex was listed for sale. The listing was discreet, with old photos and a note that said, "Tenant occupied, please do not disturb." Carol was trying to sell the property while simultaneously harassing us about curtains. I looked at the asking price and realized it was completely fair and well within our pre-approved mortgage range. That's when an idea started forming in my mind, a beautiful, perfectly legal idea that would solve all our problems. I spent the rest of the night researching and making phone calls. By morning, I had contacted a real estate lawyer and a buyer's agent. On the lawyer's advice, we formed a simple LLC to make the purchase anonymously. For a touch of poetic justice, I named it Starlight Properties. While I was setting all this up, Carol's harassment campaign intensified. She started complaining about everything we did. She sent texts about cooking odors from our dinner. She left notes about the placement of our doormat. She even complained when our daughter left her bicycle on our patio for an hour after school. It was clear she was trying to build a case against us to justify the eviction. What she didn't realize was that she was actually building a case against herself as a terrible landlord. My agent submitted a full-price, quick-close offer through the LLC. Carol, seeing a solid offer from what appeared to be a corporate entity, accepted it almost immediately. She was probably thrilled to get rid of the property hassle-free and cash out quickly. The closing date was set for 4 weeks away. Those 4 weeks were some of the most stressful of my life, but not for the reasons you might think. The stress came from having to pretend to be worried, compliant tenants while living next door to a woman whose entire world we were about to flip upside down. Every time Carol made another passive-aggressive comment or left another note, I had to bite my tongue and act like a concerned renter instead of revealing that I was about to become her new landlord. There were several times I almost slipped up and said something that would have given it away. A week before closing, Carol delivered what she clearly thought was her knockout punch. She had a lawyer draft a formal 30-day eviction notice. She probably figured this would impress the new corporate owners and clear the way for them to take possession of a tenant-free property. She handed me the notice with this smug smile on her face and told me not to bother fighting it because the new owners wouldn't want troublesome tenants anyway. I just took the notice and said, "Okay, Carol, we'll review this." The closing went off without a hitch. The title was transferred, the money was in Carol's bank account, and the duplex now officially belonged to Starlight Properties, which meant it belonged to us. The day after closing, I was loading groceries from my car when I saw Carol in the shared driveway. She walked over with that same smug look she'd been wearing all week. "Just a reminder," she said, "you have 29 days left. You should start packing because the new owners will want you out promptly." I couldn't help but smile. "Oh, about that, Carol. We've actually been in communication with the new owners." She looked even more arrogant. "And I'm sure they agreed with me about maintaining proper standards?" "Actually, yes," I said, my smile getting bigger. "And we, the new owners, have decided the curtains can stay. In fact, we love them." The look on Carol's face was absolutely priceless. I watched as confusion turned to suspicion, then to dawning horror as she started to piece together what I was saying. "Starlight Properties is our company," I explained, pulling out my phone to show her the public LLC filing. "We bought the duplex last week." Bob, who had been watering plants nearby, just stopped and stared with his mouth hanging open. "And speaking of new ownership," I continued, "we have some changes to make. We'll be needing the whole property for our family." I handed her a crisp, professionally prepared notice. "Here's your 60-day notice to terminate your tenancy. As your new landlord, I need you to vacate the premises." Carol's face went through about 5 different shades of red and purple. She started sputtering about how this couldn't be legal, how we had tricked her, how she was going to fight this. "It's completely legal," I said calmly. "You sold us the property. We're the new owners, and now we're terminating your month-to-month tenancy with proper notice. Also, I'll be conducting a move-out inspection, and any damages will be deducted from your security deposit per the terms of your lease." The next 2 months were absolutely satisfying to watch. Carol tried everything she could think of to get out of moving. She contacted lawyers, filed complaints with various city departments, and even tried to claim we had defrauded her somehow. But every attorney she consulted told her the same thing. The sale was completely legitimate, and we had every right to terminate her tenancy. Bob, meanwhile, seemed almost relieved. A few times when Carol wasn't around, he actually thanked us for buying the place. He mentioned that Carol had been talking about selling for months but could never make up her mind, and he was tired of dealing with tenant complaints and property management. Moving day was a thing of beauty. Carol barely spoke to us and refused to make eye contact, but Bob gave us a quiet, resigned nod as he loaded boxes into their moving truck. I think he knew his wife had brought this entirely on herself. After they left, we started the renovation process. We knocked down the non-structural wall between the 2 units, creating a huge open living space. We painted the front door a brilliant purple that matched our daughter's galaxy curtains. The first night in our newly expanded home, I tucked our daughter into bed and closed those controversial curtains that had started this whole adventure. Looking at that beautiful star pattern, I couldn't help but smile. Carol had been right about one thing. Those curtains definitely changed the value of the property. They just didn't lower it like she thought. They led us to discover the house was for sale and gave us the motivation to buy our perfect home. We heard through neighborhood gossip that Carol and Bob moved to an apartment across town. I genuinely hope for her sake that she's learned to mind her own business and let her neighbors live in peace. Every evening when we close those galaxy curtains, I'm reminded that sometimes the best revenge is just being patient and letting entitled people defeat themselves. Carol's need to control every detail of our lives led her to sell us the property that gave us control over hers. Our daughter loves her room even more now that the house is fully ours. She started an astronomy club at school and regularly has friends over for sleepovers where they all pretend to be astronauts sleeping in their spaceship. The best part is knowing that no landlord will ever again be able to tell us what color curtains we can hang in our own home. Update: 6 months later. I figured I should give everyone an update on how things have been going since we became homeowners and Carol became our former tenant. First off, the legal stuff. Carol did try to cause problems after she moved out. About a month after her lease ended, she filed a complaint with the city claiming we had somehow defrauded her in the sale. She also tried to dispute some of the security deposit deductions we made for damages. The fraud complaint was dismissed pretty quickly. Our lawyer had documented everything perfectly, and the city attorney who reviewed the case told Carol's lawyer that there was absolutely nothing illegal about what we did. Apparently, Carol's attorney even advised her to drop it because she could end up owing us legal fees if she kept pushing. The security deposit dispute was more interesting. Carol claimed we were making up damages that didn't exist. What she didn't know was that we had done a thorough walkthrough with our lawyer before she moved out and documented everything with photos and video. The damages included several holes in the walls where she had hung heavy decorations without using proper anchors, scuff marks on the shared wall from all her aggressive door slamming and wall banging, and some pretty significant scratches on the hardwood floors from moving furniture without protective pads. We ended up keeping about $800 of her $1,500 security deposit. She threatened to take us to small claims court over it, but her lawyer must have talked some sense into her because we never heard anything more about it. The renovation has been amazing. Knocking down that wall between the two units created this incredible open concept space that feels twice as big as either unit did separately. We now have a huge living room, a proper dining room, and my wife was able to set up a home office in what used to be Carol's spare bedroom. Our daughter's room is still her favorite space in the house. She's added even more space-themed decorations, and those galaxy curtains are still hanging proudly in her window. She's made friends with several kids in the neighborhood, and they all love coming over to see her space room. The funniest part of this update is what we learned about Carol from our neighbors. Turns out we weren't the only ones who had problems with her controlling behavior. Mrs. Chen, who lives across the street, told us that Carol used to send her passive-aggressive notes about her flower garden being too colorful. The family next door mentioned that Carol once called the city to complain about their kid's basketball hoop being an eyesore. Even more ridiculous, we found out from the postal worker that Carol had actually complained to the post office about other neighbors getting packages delivered at different times of day because she thought it made the neighborhood look unprofessional. The woman was basically the unofficial HOA president of a neighborhood that didn't even have an HOA. Bob, on the other hand, seems to be doing much better. We ran into him at the grocery store a few weeks ago, and he looked like a completely different person. He was actually smiling and making small talk instead of that nervous, apologetic demeanor he used to have. He told us that their new apartment is smaller but much more peaceful. He also mentioned that Carol has been forced to dial back her controlling tendencies because apartment living means she can't monitor and manage everything around her like she used to. He even thanked us again for buying the duplex. He said that Carol had been obsessing over every little detail of being a landlord for years, and it was driving them both crazy. The sale gave them enough money to pay off some debts and start fresh somewhere new. We also learned some interesting things about the duplex's history. The previous tenant before us had apparently only lasted 6 months before Carol's micromanaging drove them away, and the tenant before that lasted even less time. The real estate agent who helped us buy the place told us that Carol had been trying to sell for almost 2 years, but kept changing her mind. She would list it, then take it off the market, then list it again with a different agent. Our quick, clean offer at full price was exactly what she needed to finally commit to selling. The neighborhood has been great. Since we're no longer dealing with Carol's constant complaints and drama, we've been able to actually get to know our neighbors properly. We've been invited to several block parties and neighborhood events. It's funny how much more welcoming everyone became once Carol moved away. Several neighbors have mentioned that they were hesitant to be too friendly with tenants before because they didn't want to deal with Carol getting upset about people in her property socializing. Our daughter has thrived in the new school district. Her teacher told us at the last parent conference that she's been doing excellent work on space and science projects. She even won a school science fair with a project about different types of galaxies, inspired by her bedroom curtains. The property value has actually increased since we bought it. Our real estate agent mentioned that similar duplexes in the area have been selling for about 15% more than what we paid. Converting it to a single-family home was apparently a smart move that added significant value. We're planning to refinish the hardwood floors this summer and update the kitchen with newer appliances. It's been incredible being able to make these kinds of decisions without having to ask permission from a landlord. The best revenge update, though, is what happened to Carol's apartment situation. Through the neighborhood gossip network, we heard that she's already had problems with her new landlord. Apparently, she tried to complain about the apartment complex's landscaping choices and sent multiple emails about other tenants' balcony decorations. Her new landlord basically told her that if she didn't like the way the complex was managed, she was welcome to find somewhere else to live. She also got in trouble with the apartment management for leaving passive-aggressive notes on other tenants' doors about things like cooking smells and noise levels. The management company had to send her a formal warning about harassment. It sounds like Carol is learning the hard way that being a tenant instead of a property owner means she can't control her environment the same way she used to. My wife and I still laugh about the whole curtain situation sometimes. What started as a completely unreasonable demand about our daughter's bedroom decorations ended up giving us the perfect opportunity to buy our dream home. Those galaxy curtains are still hanging in the same window, visible from the street just like they were when Carol first spotted them. The difference is, now we own the property, so we can hang whatever curtains we want in every single window. We're planning to add a small observatory deck to the backyard this fall so our daughter can use her telescope more easily. I have a feeling Carol would have had something to say about that project too if she were still our landlord. Instead, we're free to create the perfect space for our astronomy-loving daughter without anyone complaining about property values or aesthetic codes. Sometimes I drive past Carol's old apartment complex and wonder if she ever thinks about how her obsession with controlling tiny details led to her losing control of everything. But mostly, I just drive home to our house, park in our driveway, and appreciate how good it feels to be truly home. Those curtains really did change everything, just not in the way Carol expected. The next one is a pro-revenge story. I was pushing 40, and I'd learned a lot of lessons in more than 10 years of legal practice. But one of the most important lessons I learned was from an older lawyer that I worked for as a summer student after the second year of law school. A lawyer has 3 duties, he told me. First to himself, second to the court, and last, the client. Always make sure you come first and the client comes last. The reason? Because clients will duck you, he said. They'll throw you under the bus without thinking twice. I should have stayed with this lawyer, but being young and an idiot, I had to go work downtown, and I'm still downtown now. But fortunately for me, I remembered this lesson, and it came in handy many years later when a client really did try to throw me under the bus. My client was this mid-sized company that did this and that and owned things here and there, not big enough to be listed, but it did have a pretty sizable real estate portfolio, and one day a building they owned burned to the ground. The company wanted to collect on the insurance, so they told Frank, a veteran salaryman, to deal with it. Frank was close to 60 and thought he knew what he was doing. He didn't need me to help him with the insurance claim, he told me. He had everything under control. Besides, lawyers are expensive. Some guys really get off on not paying legal fees, and Frank was one of those guys who gloated over every penny that he managed not to pay to the lawyers. I dealt with Frank a lot, and he was always nickel and diming me. The insurer is going to duck you, I told Frank. It was only by luck that I even knew about the fire and the loss, because Frank had not asked for my help. He'd just let it slip one day, and since then, I'd kept on top of him, trying to get him to smarten up. I'd had to fight to get him to send me the proof of loss form to make sure he hadn't messed that up. Frank ducked up a lot, and I wondered sometimes how he had a job. But the proof of loss was okay at least, so that was one less thing to worry about. "You don't know that," he said. I could tell he just wanted to get me off the phone. "I'm paid to know when insurers are trying to screw my clients," I said, "and the insurer is going to screw you. They've been stringing you along for ages with requests and questions and paperwork, but they aren't going to pay you, not unless you sue them." But Frank said he knew what he was doing, that it was all under control, and besides, he got along with the adjuster so great. "The limitation period expires in 2 weeks," I said, "and once that 2 weeks pass, it will be too late to sue. The moment that limitation period expires, they will stop taking your calls. You'll get a final email saying, 'Sorry, you're out of time,' and that will be that. Don't leave this till the last minute. Let me sue right now, and you'll have the money in no time." Frank was like, "Sure, fine, whatever, don't bother me, I got this, blah, blah, blah," and he got off the phone as soon as he could. I sent him the usual email with clear warnings and recommendations, which he ignored. I sent the email again, and then again as the limitation period approached, and again a couple of days before the deadline. "I'm going to be at trial and you won't be able to reach me," my final email said, "but you have to sue. You have other firms on your list, so pick one and sue." He didn't bother to reply, and I went off to do my trial. The trial lasted a couple of weeks, and no email from Frank. Then a month passed, and another month, still no email. I figured he must have sorted things out. Maybe Frank was right after all, I said to myself. And then my phone rang. It was Frank. Remember that fire insurance thing we spoke about? We'd only spoken about it like a dozen times. I figured he was calling up to gloat, so I cut to the chase. So they paid out. That's great, Frank. You were right. He asked me what I was talking about and could he see a copy of the claim? What claim? I said. The claim against the insurer. You know, that claim. Does that mean the insurer didn't pay? I said. He hung up on me. And then a few minutes later, my computer dinged, and there was Frank's email, talking about how we spoke, and he told me to sue, and he was worried when I hadn't sent him a copy of the claim, so he was following up to get a copy of the claim. I emailed him back. I take it that the insurer didn't pay you, just like I told you they wouldn't, and now that the limitation period is expired, they told you to jump in the lake, leaving you with a loss in the millions? Is that it? I'd made a mistake by not going over Frank's head when he wouldn't listen to me, but if I'd gone over Frank's head, I never would have received another file from him, so I didn't. But that was then, and this was now, so I CC'd Frank's boss and his boss's boss, plus I CC'd Bill, the client's in-house counsel. Bill acknowledged my email right away and called me later that day. Frank messed up, he said. We know that. He's an idiot. So what do we do? So his excuses didn't work? Nope. Bill explained that they'd summoned Frank to a boardroom, but his story didn't add up, given all the warnings I'd sent him. Besides, there would have been no reason for him to keep emailing the insurer if he'd told me to sue. Once the file goes to legal counsel, Frank's role was over. The company knew Frank was bullcrapping them. So that's it then? Bill said. We just lost a couple of $1,000,000? It's okay, I said, explaining that when I realized that Frank was going to duck up, I issued a claim against the insurer. Because I'd made Frank send me the proof of loss a while earlier, I had enough information that I could sue to preserve the cause of action. Not a great claim and short on details, but good enough. You sued without instructions? Bill said. Lawyers aren't supposed to sue without instructions because if you do that, you're personally liable for whatever costs the other side incurs. It's a big deal to sue without instructions. Yep, I said. I sued without instructions. I pulled up a copy of the claim and emailed it to him as we spoke. It's a little rough, I said, but we can always amend. Thank God, Bill said. Can I leave it with you? Of course he could. The insurer was a sitting duck, and I knew I'd collect from them, no problem. A few days later, I got a call from another guy who worked for the client, a guy I didn't normally deal with. They had a situation and needed my help. I usually deal with Frank, I said. What's up? What was up was that Frank got called into another meeting, and they handed him a one-page letter, and then he put his little office things in a box, and security walked him past his coworkers to the elevator and escorted him downstairs to the parking lot. Bye-bye, Frank. He was too old to get another job, or at least not a decent one. It was a life-changing event for Frank, but for me, he was just an anecdote, a cautionary tale that I tell young lawyers sometimes over beers, maybe too often because I'm getting on in years and I have my favorite stories. I wasn't trying to get revenge on Frank, not at all, and I would have felt a bit sorry for him if he hadn't been trying to throw me under the bus. But the guy who replaced him was great and never nickel and dimed me, so it was all good. The next one is a malicious compliance story, so I go to a pretty lax boarding trade school. In my free time, I mostly play video games or watch shows, normal stuff. I really don't want to be that guy that does nothing but hog the TV, so I typically ask before hopping on because I like long sessions. Now my dorm staff, I'll call him Betting Man for later reasons, recently started having problems with me on the TV, but these were all at night, and not when anyone else from our dorm wanted to watch anything. I found out a few days later that he would only take me off of the game in order to watch basketball for himself. This was initially upsetting, but then he started reaching in his rulebook to find more reasons to kick me off. Normally, students are only allowed 2 hours a day on the TV, but I've been merciful. I would be confused because this rule was never said to me, but I would always back off because it's not too much for me to quit, until he started doing it while I was playing Marvel Rivals. If you don't know, Marvel Rivals is a first-person online multiplayer shooter. Keyword is online. They have penalties for leaving the game early no matter what your excuse is. They don't care if a staff member is breathing down your neck. Now, about June this year, Betting Man wants the TV again. I explained that I need him to wait a few minutes in order for me to end the game. He's not having it, and I get thrown off focus trying to explain I can't pause an online ranked match to the 68-year-old man. I end up losing that match in my rank. So, as a man in my petty era, I get malicious. I studied his every weakness. How the staff keep complaining about how he can't fill out simple things on the computer. How he keeps asking other students to set up the TV channel for him. It all clicked on a rainy day 2 weeks ago. My spot had been robbed again, but they wanted to watch a movie in the main lobby. They haven't been able to for weeks because the center got new TVs. They said I could use that TV if I could figure out how it works. I looked up how to start up that particular TV and remotes and patched it all up really nice because I was bored. One of my special interests is tinkering with electronics. So they ended up taking the big lobby TV anyway to watch the game, and I was just done for the day. Being gaslit really takes the fun out of doing anything. But I heard Betting Man say, it's not a big deal. You're not even making money. I have a bet on this. Fast forward to today, and I had a game plan. I unplugged both cable boxes and reset the remotes. All he could force me to do is reset the TV to the cable channel, which is all I did. I let 2 people from another dorm use the TV for a few hours until game time. As soon as the 2 from another dorm got off, I turn on my Xbox. Betting Man starts yelling about the rules, but I tell him that I haven't played all day and my 2-hour just started. Can't you go to another side? It's the playoffs. If a higher level staff catches him out of area watching TV, he could get in serious trouble. I tell him, I find it really uncomfortable to go over there because it's mostly girls. He starts walking off and ranting because I know and he knows that he has no way to kick me off of the game for the 2 hours of his game he's betting on. I let him have it back after laughing to myself for 20 minutes, just to have it on the wrong channel. I'm looking across from the main lobby and they're still trying to set up the TV. Ali see as white snow. They were on the right channel to begin with, but the fricked it all the way up. They eventually figured it out halfway through the game, but I now know I just have to wait until 8 p.m. to start playing and he's screwed. The worst, I'll get us a lecture on the value of money, while he whines around the dorm trying to get someone to back off the TV. The next one is an entitled people story. I recently bought my first home in a quiet suburb. It's a super proud moment for me, being single in my early 30s and having saved for years. The house has a long driveway that leads up to a detached garage in the back, and I park halfway up so I can easily walk to the front door. Important detail: the driveway is 100% on my property and not shared at all. My neighbor Olivia is in her mid-40s and has lived in her house for over a decade. She was pleasant enough when I first moved in, bringing over cookies and saying things like, "Welcome to the neighborhood," until I actually started using my driveway. About a week after I moved in, I came home to find her car parked in my driveway, not partially but completely blocking my garage. I thought maybe it was a mistake, like someone visiting her got confused. I knocked on her door and she answered with, "Oh, that's just me. I've always parked there. The old owners let me." I told her as politely as I could that it's my property and I'd prefer to keep it clear for my car. She replied, "Well, I've been here 10 years. It's just easier for me. The street gets icy and my driveway is too narrow. You have room." I repeated myself nicely but firmly and said I needed it to be clear going forward. She rolled her eyes and slammed the door. I thought that was the end of it. The next day, her car was back. I left a note this time, just in case she didn't hear me the first time. Then I started parking behind her so she couldn't leave until she came to talk to me. Sure enough, she came over furious. She started yelling about how I was being disrespectful and selfish, saying that good neighbors share. I told her if she parked there again, I'd have her towed. She said, and I quote, "That's not very neighborly. You'll regret making enemies here." So I did exactly what I said. The next time she parked there, I called a tow truck. She lost it and called the cops on me. When they showed up, they saw my property line and basically told her to stop harassing me. Anyway, thank you for watching.